Ahoy there, speculative pirates, Pastafarians, and ye seekers of sacred carbohydrates. Welcome aboard. I be Captain Dread Pyrate Higgs, humble host for the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster of British Columbia, and licensed purveyor of spiritual marinara. If you be new here, this be a Pastafarian sermon served up weekly, devoted to the praise and glory of our lowly Lord, wherein we explore life, spirituality, philosophy, and other matters of importance, such as whether or not pineapple belongs on pizza. And for the record, no toppings are forbidden by the monster. So don your colanders and tricorns with pride, fill your goblets with grog, arm yourselves with the instruments of consumption, and let the spiritual feasting begin. Ahoy, me mates, and jolly Friday! Let us speak today on a peculiar species of modern ritual that keeps appearing in the wild waters of the internet. It does not come from tradition. It does not come from history. It comes from collective improvisation. Millions of people tossing ideas into the sea and seeing which ones float long enough to become a joke. And occasionally one of these jokes hardens into something that looks suspiciously like a holiday. Not official, not organized, but widely understood in the way that nonsense sometimes becomes culturally real long enough to confuse newcomers. These are what we might call consensual holidays in celebration of absurdity. Events that sound like they were named by a pirate council that briefly discovered legal terminology and decided to apply it to chaos. Now, on the surface, they are funny because they are excessive. They take something instinctive, awkward, or socially charged and stretch it into ceremonial form. But if you stare at them long enough, really stare, you start to notice something underneath the laughter. A question, not shouted, not formal, just sitting there like a ship in fog. The question is this: what happens when humans blur the line between opportunistic humor and genuine inquiry? Because these rituals, these absurd little communicative festivals, almost always orbit the same hidden tension. People trying to navigate boundaries, using humor instead of clarity. And humor, while powerful, is not always precise. Pirates understand this instinctively. A pirate joke can become a broken nose if the timing is off. A shouted misunderstanding at sea does not come with subtitles or clarification boxes. It comes with consequences. And so, over time, even pirates learn a strange discipline. Before action, there be awareness. Before movement, there be reading the room. Before taking, there be a pregnant pause to wondering whether you actually ought to. This is not morality dressed up in fancy clothes. It is navigation. Because the sea, like human interaction, is full of signals that are easy to misread if you are moving too fast. The flying spaghetti monster, drifting somewhere between cosmic absurdity and gentle indifference, does not issue strict laws carved into stone. The flying spaghetti monster offers something softer, suggestions that arrive like waves rather than thunder. And one of those suggestions appears again and again across every culture, every political and religious system, every chaotic gathering of thinking creatures. Do not assume, not because assumption is evil, but because assumption is expensive. It costs trust. It costs clarity. It costs the implied and unspoken agreement that makes shared space possible in the first place. Now, here's where our digital connections make things interesting, because we see it as a disguise of things that are called jokes. It wraps uncomfortable truths in absurd packaging and hands them to you like, don't worry, it's just a meme. But underneath the meme is often something real, a stress test for how we understand each other. A chaotic little mirror held up to the way humans negotiate permission, boundaries, and personal space. And sometimes, just sometimes, that mirror shows us that we are not nearly as good at asking as we think we are. We move fast. We assume agreement. We mistake silence for consent. We confuse familiarity with permission. And then we wonder why things break. So, these absurd internet holidays, these strange Pastafarian cultural inventions, become unintentionally educational. Not because they teach directly, but because they exaggerate the problem just enough for us to notice it. They take the hidden rule of social life and turn up the volume until it crackles. Ask first. Confirm before proceeding. Do not treat the world like an open dock where everything and everyone is free to board. Even the most chaotic pirate eventually learns this lesson. Not through wisdom, through wreckage. Through the slow realization that not every ship you approach is empty. Not every signal is an invitation. Not every joke is shared. And not every silence means yes. So, what we do with this strange cultural artifact, this so-called consensual absurdity holiday, whatever form it takes in the wild seas of the internet, we don't treat it as doctrine. We don't treat it as scandal. We treat it as a symptom. A reminder that humans are constantly trying to talk about boundaries without always having the language to do it cleanly. Sometimes that results in humor that overshoots, and sometimes it results in confusion. But underneath it all, the same principle keeps surfacing like a buoy on rough water. Respect is not the opposite of chaos. It is what keeps chaos from becoming collision. And consent is not a restriction placed on freedom. It is the mechanism that makes shared freedom possible. So when you strip away the jokes, the exaggeration, the internet noise, and the strange naming conventions that no historian will ever fully explain, what remains is a very simple message. Before you act, you check. Before you assume, you ask. Before you proceed, you acknowledge that another mind may exist in the space you are about to occupy. So, sail wisely, me hearties. Ask first, assume less, and never trust a holiday invented by people who have not slept properly since 2014. Ramen. If you've enjoyed today's sermon, or it has at least given you a hankering for pasta, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with a friend who could use a little more carbohydrate-based philosophical perspective and saucy theological inspiration. New sermons arrive every Friday, God willing, because our monster appreciates a degree of regularity and plenty of leftovers. Until next time, may you be touched by his noodly appendages, sated by his zesty sauce, and cradled in his comfy colander. Fair winds, following seas, and as ever, ramen. Aye, aye, and goodbye.